It's a little different of a presentation for me to give because y'all are designers. I'm one of you. I actually went to architecture school, and I've kind of found myself talking about architecture at a different level. It's kind of mind-blowing to follow Chris in this presentation because Chris is taking things. I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual communicator, and I never thought about presenting to an audience of individuals who have no sight. And also, Chris's presentation is at a much more micro level of how we touch in the tactile environment of our world. I'm going to take you a step out. Joyce has kind of challenged me to kind of unpack some of my message. So what I'm going to do is a typical presentation, but it's going to kind of have the director's cut edition. I'm going to have some of my notes going as I talk. So you're going to be getting a different side of my presentation, but I really want you all to realize I'm no different from you all. I have essentially the same training, the same tools. And this is really what I'm up here on the stage doing is a performance. I'm actually, it's a three-act play, so to speak. You're just getting a fourth act. So looking at architecture and how we're trained in architecture, we have, again, the Vitruvian principles of firmness, commodity, and delight. I take that into the presentation. The presentation is a form of architecture for me. There's what's the issue? What's the main point in my presentation? How does it all work? How does it work for you all? How do you relate to it? And then finally, rather than the aesthetic and humanity, the delight standpoint, I want to show you what it looks like. What does policy look like? And why does it matter to you at home? Much in the way that Chris just went through the details of how the code was created and what it results in the world, why a decision was made. So thinking back to how we're trained as designers, we're trained to be empathetic. We're trained to look at other perspectives, see other ways of thinking, understanding the bigger issues at hand. We do integrative thinking. We look at analysis, we pull apart the contradictions that are in the world and put solutions on the table. It's all about creating something, right? And finally, third, we experiment. We try different iterative processes before we come to a solution. And there's many solutions on the table. But we're looking at those constraints, we're looking at the issues, and we're trying to figure it all out. And finally, we collaborate. We're thinking about things with other people in mind. We collaborate in a design process with engineers, landscape architects, planners, all of that. In my practice, I just take it to a higher level, and there's many more people that I have to collaborate with because this is our built environment. And ultimately, it's a story. Pitching your design in front of a jury, in front of a client, you have to communicate with people that don't necessarily understand design the way that we do. At the city planning level, there's a bigger audience. It's a lot more people that have to be involved. So for me, PowerPoint is a very powerful weapon. What's up on that screen is how many square feet of information do we have here? This is a lot that we can communicate to folks. A lot of my work goes back to the trainings of Edward Tufte. I don't know if you all know Edward Tufte. He's a Yale professor of graphic design who communicates differently, looks at data and how it's presented, and then rearranges it. He's basically looking at something like, we look at an iPhone. How many bits of information are on this little thing that we look at and it communicates information? And behind me, I have how many different iPhones that I can put up here for information? So I have the ability to pump a lot of information into your brain while I'm talking. You're picking this up while I'm telling a narrative. The story is one thing. I have essentially a video screen going on behind me. So y'all remember the space shuttle? Does anybody know Edward Tufte or have ever seen any of his work? Anybody in the audience? A couple of people? Okay, so this is going to be familiar to you. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, the engineers actually knew that this was going to be a problem. These people died. The executives for NASA heard from the engineers. The engineers were freaking out and about the launch date of what was going on with this launch for Challenger. This is actually the presentation that the engineers made back before the launch. So they freaked out. They went to the executives. The executives are like, all right, you guys are freaking out. What's the deal? And this is the title of the overhead. So we have a temperature concern on the SRM joint. So right away what we get is we get jargon. What the hell's an SRM joint? You're concerned? I'm concerned about my hair loss, right? What does it matter, right? So here's data. We got data. This is a slide. This is the second overhead slide. You got data. Again, more jargon. more jargon. Here's some high probability of no secondary seal. Okay, what's a high probability? Are you talking 30%, 80%, 90%? What are we talking here? And so, again, but in engineer world, this means something. We've got a pitcher, all right? Well, we've got two O-rings, right? So when we have a temperature deflection, this one's actually doing the job here. I mean, that's why you have redundancy. Why are you guys freaking out? We've got more information. The blow-by history is much visually worse, all right? This is an aesthetic issue now? I thought you guys are engineers. What's the deal here? More data, and here's some conclusions. And just grab anything on this slide. Development motors had putty packing, which resulted in better performance. All right, pack more putty on it. Why are you guys freaking out? We have millions of dollars on the line here, and y'all are freaking out? What's the deal? We got to get this launch up. So people died. The engineers got a second bite at the apple, so they got a second bite at presenting the information to the engineers. They took more time. They actually put graphics together. Here's their graphics. So again, we have the data. We've got damage to the O-rings. We've got booster rockets, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got temperature. So all the data's there of what the issue is. The temperature of the booster rockets inflecting on the O-ring is going to cause an explosion, right? And here's the chart. So right away, engineers being engineers, they're very precise about the information, right? So we have launch 1, launch 2, launch 3, launch 4, launch 5, et cetera, right? Booster rocket A, booster rocket B, the temperature. Now what the engineers failed to do is they failed to show the correlative effect of what the information is. It's insignificant to know booster rocket A, booster rocket B, launch 1, launch 2. That doesn't matter. The launch cycle doesn't matter. What matters is how it's launched and the temperature. So if you look at, Edward Tufte rearranges the information, and you see here that this is an optimum launch, around 80 degrees. Most of their launches are around 70. But as soon as you get to about 65 degrees, that's when you start to see damage happening. Damage, right? And you want to launch over here? So if I'm presenting information, what's the information I want to show? Like my mom, who has a high school education, can tell that that's a pretty big gap right here between 50 and 29 degrees. They were trying to explain that it was the cold temperature that was going to cause the O-ring problem. If they just did this one graphic, they could have communicated that. Now, you all are trained in graphics. You all understand this stuff. We understand how to communicate graphically. This is how we would have approached the problem, right? So what I found in my practice, this is one of my main tricks. This slide is in my head every single slide that I use. And to quote Charles Mingus, making the simple complicated is commonplace. Making the complicated simple, awesomely simple, that's creativity. Now we have to take creativity, our ability to be creative with solutions, into the information process outside of the design process. My challenge that I'm going to pose to you today, and I agreed with Ms. Owens that I'd talk about the inside game so long as I could deliver my message. So my message is tax literacy. I'm in front of an audience of designers, and I want you to know the tax system is destroying our country, and that you all need to advocate for a tax change. Why am I doing that? Well, the AIA was a principal advocate in the creation of the Tax Reform Act of 1976, which became the tax code that helped historic tax credits happen. It was about rebirthing our downtowns and realizing that the tax system was one of the biggest impediments to revitalizing cities. So y'all were there before. I just want you to go back to it. So why did I become an architect? Well, I became an architect because of this man. This is my grandfather. I grew up on job sites. When I was a little kid, I used to follow him around. I had a little magnet tied to my waist, and he had me walk around the job sites picking up nails, and I thought that was building architecture. I grew up in upstate New York, Rome, New York. For those of you that don't know Rome, New York, it's in the center of the state, up outside of Syracuse. Rome has become such a dump that they market themselves. Rome is in the middle of all the action in New York State. So if you're in Albany, why not drive 2 hours to Rome? Like we're not cool enough to actually have action, but other people do. Growing up, Rome was actually the center point of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal went east and west from there. So if y'all ever sang the song with the mule named Sail, 15 miles on the Erie Canal, that takes place in Rome. This is my hometown back in the day. And when I was a kid in the 70s, Rome suffered a lot of the decline of the Rust Belt cities. And they were trying to figure out how to revitalize its economy. And they came up with this really creative idea of rebuilding the fort of Fort Stanwix. Y'all remember your Revolutionary War history? Remember the pivotal battle of Fort Stanwix? Anyone? So it was a good idea. I mean, let's build a fort, right? But the thing is, we had this inconvenient issue where the downtown was built on where the fort was. So when I was a kid, they tore all of this stuff down, and we got a fort. So this is what I grew up. This was my normal. You know, we occasionally get a Canadian tourist, and that's about it. Now, if it was the 70s, right? So if that wasn't good enough, they expanded the project to do an urban renewal area over here. We got a pedestrian mall. Hey, it's the 70s. Why not? They built a plaza on the pedestrian mall because apparently 12 acres of open space wasn't good enough. So they put another 4, a couple parking decks because y'all are going to come to Rome, New York now, right? A new city hall. And because this parking structure was way too far away from City Hall at about 100 feet distance, they built a surface parking lot there. They built a mall over here. And then the craziest thing ever, it was like Le Corbusier meets the Ponte Vecchio. They built this concrete structure that went over the highway with stores on it. It was called the Living Bridge. It almost died immediately. When I was a kid, this was the first escalator I'd ever seen. So me and my brothers were all like riding the escalators up and down all day. Of the 280 merchants that got checks to relocate in this area, that were all part of this used to be here area, 18 businesses relocated. The other 200 some odd people moved to Florida or wherever. They just said, all right, bye, we're out here. This is what I thought a city was. This is what I have. This is the church that I went to church in. I used to stare at the ceiling all day. That was another reason why I went to architecture school. And basically, faced with the upstate New York winters, I was like, hey, I can go down to Miami. There's some beaches there. Unfortunately, I chose the wrong career move. I went into architecture school, and as you know, we all get locked in a room and we never see the sun. But while I was there, we have Dwani Plater-Zyberk talking about this new urbanism stuff. For me, this was kind of wild. I was like, wow, there's cities actually growing. They're building housing. They're building this rapacious landscape of inhospitable environments for humans. This kind of cartoon of the landscape that's actually a real place that's happening. You know, I was learning about this world. For me, this is mind-blowing. I'm like, wow, cities actually grow. Who would have known? I thought cities died. While I was in school, I took the Rome program, and I learned about a different Rome. I learned about Rome, Italy. I lived here, I went to school there, and I ate here. I could see a Rome that was totally different from my Rome, and I started asking questions, like how did this Rome survive for thousands of years, and my Rome, my hometown, is dead as a doornail? How'd that happen? And I started realizing cities are like a DNA, right? So if you want to see how I started my life, this is me. This is when I was 3 months old, and I actually had hair, and this is my trajectory, right? I'm going to be my papa whether I like it or not. Or more importantly, I'm thinking about this guy, my dad. Now, my family, I'm genetically Italian. You can see that by how much I use my hands and stuff. But we also have a predisposition to heart disease, so I have to watch what I eat. You know, I know this through all the Minicozzi males in my family. They've told me that. So if you're thinking about your city, who's your grandfather? Who do you want to be when you grow up? How are you growing? My Rome never had a model. It just bought into these gimmicks at a whole scale level. So let me give you a quick little test. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to tell me how many shapes you see in this image. I'll give you 5 seconds. You can just shout it out. Just tell me how many shapes you see. Ready, go. Okay, shout it out. Louder. 18. Well, anybody want to go higher than 18? No overachievers in this audience? 20. All right, awesome. All right. How many kids were on the school bus? Anyone? What time was it on the clock? So what I've just done to you is it's a simple behavioral trick. Daniel Kahneman is a behavioral economist, wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. He won a Nobel Prize for some of his studies on the way that we think. We're not rational actors in the environment. We're being steered by biases that we have in the way that we think. I gave you a bias. I told you how many shapes to look for, so you immediately cut out all the information on the slide. You didn't look at the kids. From here forward, everything that I'm going to show you, is just me asking a different question. All this information is hiding in plain sight. We're just not asking the right questions about our built environment. So Asheville, this is where I live now. It's up in western North Carolina. Asheville suffered the decline of most cities when the mall got built. Our downtown died when this got built. This is a shot of downtown Asheville from the 1990s. This wasn't too long ago. That's a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. Look at this wonderful fixer-upper. Wouldn't y'all want to do that? We essentially had, you can blow a cannon off on Main Street and not hit a pedestrian. We had all this boarded up stock. Unlike Rome, my hometown, they kept all of their buildings. They were too poor to tear them down because of some debt that they took on in the 1920s. So come the 90s, there was all this real estate just sitting there completely fallow. Like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to fix downtown, the people of that community had no faith in a city. They're like, we're not city dwellers, we're rural mountain country people, we're country people, it's bluegrass, we're letting our downtown die, right? Julian Price, right here, started a real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. He put his inheritance into making buildings work. It's essentially a revolving fund. I ended up working for this company. 75% of his money goes into the sticks and bricks, rehabbing buildings. It's mostly about getting people living downtown, but you need to have stuff on the street, right? You need to have retail, a nightclub, restaurants. The first vegetarian restaurant in the entire community, called the Laughing Seed, was ours. We put money behind it. So 75% of the money goes into the sticks and bricks, 25% into the businesses. Like a developer, this is our building before and after. But what I started seeing, what we were communicating information to our citizens, trying to get them to understand, why did it matter to have downtown? So if you could look at the numbers and understand the numbers and manage the numbers, you could see what's going on in your city. Now, I don't know if y'all remember 2009, there was this little thing called a recession that happened. If you think it affects architects, it also affects developers, because we can't build anything either. In the height of the recession was when I launched this company called Urban3. It was about communicating the economic potency of cities. So this is another thing. I really couldn't have gone back into design because y'all weren't hiring either. So we were all in that same boat together. At my local AIA, I basically talked to them about this. I'm like, look, why don't we take these skills outside? Don't just look at architecture as a job. There's other ways that we can apply this. So the way that I was looking at cities is that the city is a finite, that's Asheville, by the way, the city is a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. The area of your city is all that you have, right? That's only so many acres. You all are shareholders in that acreage. You own a piece of that, your house, your business, whatever. You're paying taxes to function this business, same as your firm. There's a cash flow that happens in this. My city has a finite boundary of land. We're not allowed to annex anything else. So how that works is critically important. Now, why do I point that out to you all? Let's just read, this is from Oxford Dictionary, the word incorporate. The word incorporate is defined as to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. So I am a shareholder in the corporation of Asheville. Do y'all know what your cities are worth as a corporation? You know, my city is worth $12.8 billion. It's 4 times the value of Donald Trump, right? This guy can walk around talking about his money. Well, why doesn't my mayor? Why doesn't she understand the cash flow of this stuff? By the way, I started using this joke like 3 years ago, and he's kind of destroying it for me. But anyway, because I'm not really sure he's worth $4 billion. But when a farmer grows a crop, the farmer's looking at all of that acreage and doing an economic model to figure out what the crop yield is, what that crop yields per acre, how it is in the marketplace, what the fertilizer is per acre, water per acre, all that. It's an economic model. They don't just till the whole soil. So we're talking about, in the case in Miami, University of Miami, we're talking about sprawl. Well, sprawl is essentially a crop. This is one of our buildings. Ground story retail, second floor office, residential on the top 4 floors. The city built this streetscape, so we got a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. Some people complained that we were subsidized, in front of these downtown people, got all this money, $28,000 worth of physical stuff here. All right, true enough. That is a subsidy in front of our front door, right? But we took this building from $300,000 of value in the tax rolls to $11 million. So one little piece of the portfolio just shot up 3,500%, right? The community owns that portfolio. We're paying 3,500% more taxes. Did y'all get that? Anybody have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Wouldn't that be awesome? So rather than hate on us, now I have 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. They do not like the downtown. Our state legislator called us a cesspool of sin. I thought that was pretty awesome. So we're like, well, how about a thank you card? Because the county's getting all that money too. And people say, well, Joe, that's not fair. We've got this Walmart that's $20 million. That's double the value of your building. Right? Y'all follow me? So, all right, true enough. This is my house. These are my dogs. My dogs think they're lions. They're a little funny. We do that to freak out our neighbors. We're on 1/10 of an acre. So if you have a 1-acre cookie cutter that falls from space and lands into my neighborhood, it's going to grab 10 houses, each paying $2,000 or about $20,000 an acre. Y'all follow me? So, all right, let's take that 1-acre cookie cutter, fly it up in space, and drop it on that Walmart and divide its tax bill by the 34 acres it sits on. This is what it produces per acre. Now, you've had an acre of our building downtown. This is what it produces. So you all run for office. You want to help your community. You want to manage your community's cash. What kind of cash flow do you want to have? I was presenting this in Colorado. I wanted to make it really simple for people in Colorado. I was like, look, if you have an acre of land in Colorado, what do you grow? And they got the joke, right? So you go for the cash crop, right? You're going to grow some pot, right? And people say, well, Joe, look, we don't do that. We take the losses in property taxes to take the gains in retail taxes. All right, let's run the numbers again. So the city gets a portion of the total retail sales, or about $47,000 an acre in retail sales. Add that to the property taxes. Now you're talking about $51,000 an acre for that Walmart. That's all you get. By the way, if anybody wants this presentation, I'll give it to you all as a PDF. Just let me know. The property taxes for our building alone are paying $330,000 an acre for their $51,000. We have to be fair about it. We have retail in our building. You add our retail taxes. Now you're cooking with gas at $414,000. Jobs. How do you want to look at this? So when you stack it up, when you do the math on this stuff, you see that we actually even residential per acre versus their 0. The numbers validate that urban environment. Just do the math on this stuff, right? Now, as you know, the city sits inside a corporation called the county as well. Well, before I get to that, let me talk about this guy. So a lot of times people say to me, they're like, Joe, look, what's your deal, man? Why do you have to pick on Walmart? I shop at Walmart. And I say, well, look, it's not about Walmart. You're missing the point. I actually went to the International Association of Assessing Officers conference, which makes an AIA conference seem like Burning Man by comparison. This is about the squarest, most boring conference on the planet. But what was fascinating was this guy presented there. This is the head of Walmart's real estate. And he stood up and gave this unbelievable presentation showing the construction costs of all the Walmarts to a room of 2,000 assessors. And he's like, our buildings are so cheap. We make the cheapest buildings possible. And he's showing bid tabs of all of his buildings and explaining how cheap they are. I'm in the back of the room drinking my coffee, and I'm like, damn, this is awesome. He's getting all of his tax bill lowered in one meeting, right? Assessors are agnostic. If you build a piece of crap, it's worth a piece of crap. That's it. $55 a square foot building? Great, thank you. He's handing out business cards. He's like, if we're building a building in your community, ask me, I'll share with you all of our construction information. So I roll up to the microphone after the presentation, and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? You know what his response was? 15 years. We'll be out of that building in 15 years, at most 20. We want to get out of that building as quickly as possible. We want to depreciate it down to nothing, and we want to move on, build another building, and start a depreciation cycle again. We build worthless buildings. Boy, that's complicated. You know, don't hate the player, hate the game. This is the game that's controlling how cities operate. And as you know, cities sit inside counties. So the average county resident, my county residents hate us in the city. And we show them, we're like, all right, well, y'all are paying about $1,200 in county taxes per acre, while the average city resident's paying about $1,700 per acre. So why not send us a thank you card rather than hate on us? Because we're brothers and sisters in the same county as you. Now, when the mall gets built, this is $8,000 an acre in county taxes versus residential down here, let's say less than $2,000. So you see that that's why an elected official will go for that commercial product. Well, let's not stop there. Let's bring downtown into it. Here's our building and the county taxes it pays per acre versus the mall over here. So what we see is downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county, because when does the county step in and build a greenway, do a sidewalk, help with a bike rack? Never. So the city is just shoveling all that money out into the county. Part of the reason why sprawl happens is the county gets the largesse of the city without reinvesting in it. And we need to change that. I stand before you as a designer. I don't have a finance degree. I actually sucked at my structures. I almost bombed it. Valerie's here. I got like all F's. She gets A's. I'm not good at math. But this is 5th grade division. It's called productivity. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, we'd all be driving Ford F-150s at 650 miles per tank. Could you imagine if over beers last night I was telling you that? I was like, hey, my truck gets 650 miles per tank. You'd laugh at me. You're like, Joe, look, it's the gallon of gas that drives the cars. All tanks are different sizes. We say miles per gallon. Oh, well, the numbers changed. We should all be driving 1955 BMW Asettas at 70 miles per gallon versus your Prius. Sorry, this is the greenest vehicle. It's also the most dangerous. If you get in a car accident in this thing, you're like stuck in it. But it's cool. It looks neat. So we've done this all across the country. We've done this in Canada, New Zealand. And it's a really simple pattern that we see. For every $1 of county taxes somebody out in the county pays to the county, a city resident's paying about $5.50 to the county. The Walmart's about $6, $7. The mall's about $9. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, it pumps up. This could be any little main street. This could be in downtown Driggs, Idaho, or downtown Durham, North Carolina. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, it shoots up. This is a 3-story building and a 6-story building. I'm not talking about skyscrapers here. This is all below the high-rise code. So you see this exponential jump up like a ski slope. You may be thinking right now, this seems way too simple. Why hasn't anybody gotten onto this? Let me give you something else that's simple. In 1972, a pilot took out the patent for putting wheels on luggage, right? In 1991, the patent expired. So then, for those of you that remember, all of a sudden we got wheels on luggage, right? Do you remember that O.J. Simpson commercial from the 70s where he's running through the airport carrying his luggage? Could you imagine watching people carrying those suitcases anymore? So realize this, we put wheels on luggage after we put a man on the moon. Did we not know what a wheel was? Yeah, sometimes simple stuff takes a little bit of time to get to, right? And actually, Ian McHarg talked about this in the 1960s. Again, another architect. He also has a master's in landscape architecture. And in the book, Design with Nature, he says, money is our measure. Now, Ian is Scottish. He can't leave the American culture alone. He likes to pick on who we are. He'd have a field day with what's going on now. But he says, money is our measure. Convenience is cohort. The short term its span, and may the devil take the hindmost as its morality. Right? This is the kind of city that we build, this disposable city, the most cost, wasteful, landfill type of buildings. We build buildings to fall apart. So if Ian's talking about this, can we take that, can we show the money? Can I show the way that I show you I can do an MRI and see what's going on inside your brain? We can visualize the data in different ways. I mean, heck, I can show you what's going on inside an earthworm. So can we do that with the city? Can we take the city, move the city aside, and with GIS technology, we can do layers, right? We can do the infrastructure layer. The buildings are built on that infrastructure. That's the man-made environment. I can show you what's going on in the earth with the hydrology and the geology. Those are the layers of our built environment, the nature and the man-made. But let's go ahead and separate that. Let's split the two apart, and let me show you the economics of what's going on with my city, right? So here's Asheville. This is my county. This is a park right here, so we just grade it out because it's not worth anything. So this is a map of value. A park doesn't pay taxes, so I'm just going to be cold about it and just say, it doesn't give me taxes, I don't care about it. We've got low value in green, hot is high value. So this is the Biltmore estate. It's George Vanderbilt's heirs live there. When Jack Cecil, owner of the Biltmore estate, shows up, his house is worth $100 million. Anybody in the room got a house worth $100 million? You know? So when he shows up at a council meeting, everybody genuflects and thanks him for his time. Thank you, Mr. Cecil. We're not worthy. Well, it's not fair, though, because he sits on 8,000 acres of real estate. He's got the biggest house in the entire United States. His house is almost the size of this building. It's unbelievable. So that's not a fair way to look at it. He's got the biggest tank. So if we say, rather than miles per tank, we go value per acre, miles per gallon, the map changes. I'll just show it to you in 3D. Does anybody want to take a guess where downtown Asheville is? So this is what I show my community. I'm like, look, if you just throw a blanket across this thing and say that's all the county's millage rate, where does the county get all of its money? Let's just be honest about that. So a picture is indeed worth 1,000 words. I can give you economic reality in a visual. West Palm Beach, we did it here. Here's the map of West Palm Beach. You can see the potency of downtown West Palm Beach, especially when you strip off the beach effect. Can't make another beach. God gave you that. But you can make other cities, and you see the potency of West Palm Beach as the economic powerhouse of this entire region. Just for fun, this is Clematis Street, this building right here. If you had 1.2 acres of this building, it would equal the entire 19-acre Walmart. And even crazier, that little building, the Anthony building on Clematis Street, is also more potent than the Darth Vader building downtown. 2.3 acres of that guy equals a 2.6 acre that. Again, the reality of the world that we see is not indeed the world that works from an economic standpoint. Just for fun, we grabbed all of Donald Trump's real estate. He's worth about $400,000 an acre to this county, which is actually less value than one of the poorest neighborhoods in downtown, pulling about $600,000 for these guys, these shotgun shacks, 3 of which are condemned. See the condemned signs right there? They're producing almost double the taxes he's paying. That's the reality of the cash flow. I'm not making it up. This is straight out of the assessor's files. Charleston, this is actually one of the best projects that we've got because this gives us the most potent historic urbanism in it. And you can see it killing it on the peninsula. This is downtown Charleston. Here's the beachhead. Again, stripping out the beaches, we can see what urbanism does. Also, there's some new urbanism in here, but we'll come to that in a second. Do y'all follow me on this? I mean, do I need to get more detailed? All right, cool. So one of the things that we're trying to get into is what is this doing? What's this historic pattern doing in downtown Charleston? Why is it killing it from a value standpoint? The old city, historic Charleston, produces about 13% of the county's taxes. The rest of Charleston, outside of the old core, produces 17%, but the actual footprint of downtown is statistically insignificant. It doesn't even make 1%. So it doesn't even make 1% of the city, yet it's producing 13% of the county's taxes. The rest of the city, so that's like a what? Let's give it 1% in footprint. It's like a 1 to 13 potency, while the rest of the city is like a 2 to 1, and then the county is actually upside down or backward from a productivity standpoint. Now these are the county's taxes, right? You guys got quiet. Is this too freaky first thing in the morning? So, just looking at the buildings that are built over 3 stories, one of the things that's phenomenal is just as you go around your communities, just start to count buildings that are over 3 stories tall. You saw on that chart how I showed 1-story building versus a 2-story building. Think of how much land area we've consumed in our regions with 1-story buildings. That's the sprawl that's happening. So there's also a pattern in the construction post-war. A lot more of Charleston was built post-World War II. You can see it in this graph here, with the pre-World War II buildings being mostly these beige buildings in the center. So we looked at their wealth, and sure enough, the value of that development, there's a lot more development value post-World War II. There's also a lot more buildings. So there is indeed a lot of wealth. Oh, by the way, there's a recession right there. But in looking at it, the pre-World War II buildings, or the population pre-World War II, was about 1/3 the population of the whole entire region. They added a lot more people post-World War II. But check out the land coverage. Those people pre-World War II were essentially 14% of the land area. So we're adding more land per person post-World War II. That's stretching out, right? When you look at the value of the buildings, this is World War II ends. This is time across the bottom. These are all the buildings built before World War II. These are all the buildings built after World War II. So though they indeed have a large value in total, when you look at that value from a potency standpoint, those older buildings are actually much higher producers of wealth for the community. This is really super nerdy data. I've got this guy that's an economist that works with me, and he produces these things. It's hard to communicate them, but what I do is turn it into a picture. So, okay, let's talk about those older buildings for a second. This is the most valuable building in the entire metropolitan region. It's $100 million of value per acre. To put that in context, the Walmart is about $900,000 of value per acre. So this is about, what, 120% the potency of a Walmart. It was built in 1911. So it's been doing that for over 100 years. Oh, by the way, I asked them, I'm like, why did you guys deface the building? Like, what happened here? They just ripped the top of it off. But the other question is, why have they not built another one of these in the last 100 years? What's wrong with that? Is like the world going to end if you build an 8-story building? So digging through, one of the things that's crazy about Charleston is the building behind me in this picture is where the Redcoats imprisoned all the revolutionaries. So when Boston started freaking out with the revolution, Charleston, the British down there, just grabbed all the colonists and just shoved them into one building. And they're like, all right, we're just not going to let you act up. Our country was formed on a tax revolt. This is an old colonial barb that I love. Don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fellow behind the tree, right? That's it. That's who we are as Americans. We don't like taxes. So there's a revolutionary right there. I grabbed this building, 1686. This building was built in 1686. It's the oldest liquor store in the entire United States, functioning since 1686 as a liquor store. It's valued at $13 million of value per acre. It's a 2-story building. The Walmart, again, is $900,000 an acre. The guy that was inside, this is kind of ironic, he was actually British. Thought that was kind of weird. But he was really excited about his building. He was excited about his store, and showed me old pictures of the 1800s when this building was, where there's like a cotton truck going by. But all in that neighborhood, you find these buildings. This is a building that's from 1718, $88 million of value per acre. Again, the Walmart, $900,000 of value per acre. And this building's nothing to write home about architecturally. It's just masonry and some windows and a little roof and call it a day. It's even got like some sort of electrical box shoved in front of it. But that built environment, that urban design in the context of what's around it is what's producing value, right? So we thought, well, why not? Let's just grab all of the buildings that predate the United States. Every single building in the portfolio that was built before July 4th, 1776. And here they all are on a map. Here's their value. And so just grabbing the ones that are downtown, it was kind of interesting. They're about 21 acres of footprint. Last year, they paid $600,000 to the county in taxes, those 21 acres. Their Walmart, incidentally, is about 21 acres, and they only paid $47,000 in taxes. So back to Mr. Terrell. This building was born in 2005, so it will be gone by 2020. The shareholders of Charleston should be asking themselves, do you want buildings that produce a very quick little return and then it dissipates immediately, or do you want something that pays a high value for over 240 years of productivity? So you're getting 13 times the potency out of these old buildings. Those buildings have suffered fires, they've suffered earthquakes, wars, and they've stood up through all of that, continually producing wealth for the community. To quote Chief Justice Brandeis, these are the relentless rules of humble arithmetic. When you look at the land under those buildings, stripping the buildings off and just looking at the value of the land, this is the value of urban design. This is the value of the city, just in the dirt. There's no buildings in this picture. And you can see the potency of downtown versus everything else around it. Looking toward the ocean, this is beachfront. You can see how they tax out-of-towners higher than they tax locals in this. This is new urbanism right here. So just by making new urbanism, which is a ripoff of old urbanism, you can essentially fertilize the soil under those buildings with beachfront real estate. Again, you can't make another beach. This is the value of design, folks. Okay, you're probably thinking at this point, Joe, you're high. You don't understand real estate. You don't understand what people want. People want to spread out. They want that suburban environment. We want to have a 1 acre lot around us. I don't want to see a neighbor. That's inconvenient. I don't want to hear somebody else's dog. Great. I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. I think you all should give that to me. It would make me happy, right? So what if I could give you the ghost of Christmas future? What if I can give you a city that's done this and gone full whole hog into suburbia? It's called Gwinnett County, Georgia. Anybody know Gwinnett County, Georgia? Cool. I didn't. And I'm only 4 hours north of this. The county seat in Gwinnett County is Lawrenceville. I was under strict instructions to not use the word urban, city, town, and municipal in my presentation. They said, Joe, look, we're rural people out here outside the Beltway. That's who we are. Now, I don't know if you ever did a presentation with like restrictions on words that you can't use. It's really hard when your company's name is Urban3. But putting that aside, we pulled their data, and I was like, all right, well, y'all are 800,000 people. I called out my client. I was like, Kelly, you're 800,000 people in your county. That's a lot of people. She goes, but honey, look, we're 480 square miles. We're huge. All right, so what's density? You divide the area into the population, right? So at a population level, there are about 1,900 people per square mile. Each of those little people up there is 100 people, which is less dense than DeKalb County, which is where Atlanta is. But we had all this other data, so I gave it to them. And I was like, all right, so y'all are 200 people denser than Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. Anybody know what's in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina? Charlotte. I was like, how the hell did you guys get denser than Mecklenburg and not produce a Charlotte? Your biggest town is Lawrenceville, which is 35,000 people. How'd you do that? This is Nashville right here. There's 600 people denser than Nashville. Both of these two places have professional sports teams. What did y'all do? This is Austin, Raleigh, this is Asheville, this is my community. And if you want to talk about a rural environment, this is Orange County, North Carolina that has Chapel Hill. Now, Chapel Hill is 50,000 people. That's actually more people in their town, but less dense. So we're talking about density. What did you create? You can tell yourself you're dense all day long. I can tell you all that I'm George Clooney. Sooner or later, I got to walk by a mirror, right? You know, there's data there. So we did their model, and when we did it, I was like, holy cow. Josh McCarty, my GIS guy, was doing this, and I was like, just turn it on its side. And we turned it on its side, and it looks like a 1970s shag carpet. It's just like across the whole thing, right? That's their value. This is what we typically see when we look at a city. We can see downtown Chapel Hill, we can see downtown Carrboro, and we can see downtown Hillsborough. The three municipalities in that county. You can see Main Street, Main Street, Main Street. Here's some new urbanism over here. So the design of that environment produces value for the community, right? Here's what they got, which is their choice. They spread out and covered every square inch of that county. The value they produce, this is the most productive building in all of Gwinnett County at $8 million of value per acre. All of these places to the left here are less dense. This is my town producing 46 million. We're only 800,000 people. Or sorry, 90,000 people in my town. So just for fun and kind of rub it in a little bit, we put the three of them, like Nashville, Austin, and Lawrenceville. These are the counties. We put them all side by side at the same scale and ran an economic heart monitor just to kind of show them what they're pulsing out at. And we're like, all right, well, Nashville's peaking at about 192 million per acre. We got a heart monitor rise in Austin of 476. Both those places are less dense than you, and you guys are flatlining at $8 million an acre. So one of the county commissioners kept on saying to me, she's like, but we're not urban. I said, ma'am, I never called you urban, I called you dense. You know, you got all of this horizontal infrastructure that they have, you've got no wealth to pay for it. Are you guys going broke yet? And they're like, oh yeah, we're going broke. Good. So the data is there. If we could just pull the data out and show folks this, it'll tell you the story. I'm going to breeze through this really quickly. This is Lafayette, Louisiana. We did a full cost-benefit analysis. Lafayette's going broke. Their mayor's like, look, we're going broke. Could you show this to people? So rather than just the revenue, we're also going to show you the cost. Now, they're actually figured out they were going broke in 1990, 1994, I was like, look, this is the cover of your budget document from 1994. Here's your government getting hit by a wave and eaten by a shark. I think your finance officer was sending you a message. This is a real document. The county commission, faced with this reality, what did they do? Go, let's kick that can down the road. Next year, the finance officer was like, did I mention how screwed we are? And then the third year, they're like, hey, let's get together and do a joint city-county government, and that'll solve the problem. And I was like, you changed none of your behavior in the last 20 years. You just took the sinking Titanic and hooked it onto the last escape vehicle. It just took 20 years to drag it down into the same thing. Did you just fire the artist from the first 2 years and go to clip art? Like, what did you do? So taking the revenue of the city, we can see the downtown. Just their pavement. Let's just take their pavement. Now, you all know this. There's costs of things in buildings. The infrastructure, the pipes, the structure. That's all part of the architecture. Well, the city is just architecture writ large. Looking at the asphalt, that's just essentially one massive parking lot. So you take all the streets and shove them together. In their case, it's a 6.5 square mile, 6.5 miles square of streets that they have to replace every 40 years. To make it a parking lot, it would fill from Manhattan to Long Island to New Jersey. It would fill all of New York Harbor. And we said, look, you got to replace this every 40 years. Twice the size of Venice, or about 12 times the size of the French Quarter. You got to pay for this. So 13% of it are in these things, these dead ends. 13% of that area. This is not part of the public network. These 4 people enjoy it like a driveway. This guy even parks his trailer on it. Cut that off. I made the stupid move at one of the public meetings. Here's the old city, here's the county. There's a lot more roads in the old city, 2/3. Got it? Okay, cool. So 2/3 of the road, yet when you look at how it's financed, the city is covering 94% of the cost of all those roads. So I was presenting, I was like, hey, shouldn't these 2 pie charts match? If you own 2/3 of the system, shouldn't you just be paying for 2/3 of the budget? Now that pissed off this county commissioner, and I love it. It was election season. This is his letter that he sent to the newspaper. The newspaper sent it to me, and they're like, can you defend this? And apparently I was going to kill his grandmother, take his kids away, all sorts of nasty stuff, then I was going to triple his taxes. But what I loved about his letter was, it's not where you live, it's what you believe. Right? So we moved from fact to fantasy. Now this is Louisiana, they're funny people. And they said, all right, well, the public works director responded by saying this: there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy. So I had to Photoshop Kevin in on this one. And Kevin's like, Joe, look, these people are crazy. Could you just show it to them in a different way? And I was like, all right, fine. So in 1960, the developer builds the road. The developer sells the road to the housing units. The housing units now have a road. The developer turns to the city council and gifts them a road. The city council is excited because they get free infrastructure, right? Well, that free infrastructure has to be rebuilt 40 years from now. So what we did is we treated their tax system the way that we treat one of our buildings in the business. So we want to have a reserve account to replace things like the air conditioner or whatever. So this is the reserve account of all the roads that they built. We're not building any more roads from 2015 going forward. And blue is the actual revenue that they have committed to the roads. So you all get elected to run a municipality. In their case, they're a $16 billion corporation. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? Now that's just today. Let's go ahead and run this over the life cycle of all of these roads going forward. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? Let me make it simpler for you. Do you have enough blue to pay for the red? So the red is not only 18 times the value of the blue, your income, but your income is already being garnished by the bonding agencies. They're taking half of that blue before it even gets to you. This is the state of most American cities right now in the United States. This is what we're battling. So, putting the city costs, this is a side view and elevation of the model. Costs are sunk, revenue's up top. We run one against the other. What's in the black, what's in the red. Here's the whole thing in 3D. It looks like the county's bleeding. Drop this whole thing on the floor. This is what it looks like. So you can see where the potency is, and you can see where the costs are. So yeah, people want to live out here. Well, who wouldn't? They're essentially paying them to move out there. They're not paying their fair cost of all their infrastructure. So put simply, in 1950, they had 5 feet of pipe per person. and 2.4 fire hydrants per 1,000. They've grown their population to 121,000. They've grown their liability up to 50 feet of pipe per person and 51 fire hydrants per 1,000. So an increase in population of 350%, an increase in liability by 1,000 and 2,000%. And they told me, look, Joe, we got rich, we got gas money. Fair enough. You increased your wealth from $28,000 of household income to $45,000 in income, but that wealth gain is only 160%. So you've got 160% more money, you've got thousands of percent more liability. This is like me getting a $1,000 a year raise and convincing my wife to build a 50,000 square foot addition on the back of my house. It makes no sense. So they got a real serious problem and they need to pull it apart. The average house is $150,000 and, oops, my battery's low. The average taxes paid that go to the roads is about $150 of that $150,000 that people pay. The reserve account for those roads should be per year $3,000. Now that's just the roads. There's stuff under the roads, the pipes. Those have to be fixed too. They have 44% of their infrastructure is in clay tile. That's $4,000 they should be setting aside. So the average house is upside down $7,000. When we talk about sprawl, we need to understand that it's subsidized, and these are the numbers that are there. So they've bought all this infrastructure, they can't pay for it. Just gonna flip ahead. These aren't invisible market forces, folks. These are policies. And Moses didn't deliver our tax policy. Moses didn't deliver any of the codes that we operate with. Humans did, and we have to make them iterative. So let's kind of flip through. Sorry, I'm going to close with this. I'm advocating to you all that we need to start talking about taxation and the economics of our cities if we're going to be talking about our built environment. The AIA needs to take leadership in this. This is the message that I'm here to deliver. This is the point that I'm trying to make with this whole presentation. We didn't emerge from the savannah with tax policy. This isn't genetic to us. This isn't difficult. The NOLI map is a tax map telling us about the built environment. In Normandy, you were taxed on your building footprint. So people started moving the building out over the street on the upper stories because it wasn't part of the footprint, it was free space, right? They changed the tax code. In England, you were taxed on your number of windows for 100 years. The more windows you had, the more taxes you paid, until people started boarding up their windows to avoid the taxes. France, everything below your roof line was considered your building. Anything above your roof line wasn't. There wasn't some urban design guideline that made Paris. It was a tax policy. People stole Francois Mansart's roof system. They stuck stories up there. When the tax assessor got out there, they're like, no, this is clearly the roof, right? We can see the world and we can see the damage that's happening. We just have to articulate that to folks. It's the tax policies that are making our communities broke. When you don't have the money for the greenway, the art teacher, or the dancing traffic cop, y'all have dancing traffic cops? Now, that money is tied up somewhere. And I just wanted to show you that and show you that tax policy essentially hates architecture. Put very simply, here's my point. The cheaper, crappier the building you make, the lower the taxes you pay. That's it. This little clicker that I have right here, this little Logitech clicker, don't you think when Logitech built this and put it out in the marketplace, didn't they figure out the cost of the plastic before they put the price on it? Of course. We just need to do the same thing for the cities. So to close, as a designer, I truly believe in this Leon Career quote, every building in the city must be thought of as if you were building one piece of the whole world. We need to be advocating for better buildings, better communities, a better design environment, and we need to understand what's fighting that. And we need to take down those barriers, and to do that, you need to do the math. Thank you.